For some years now, we have been hearing about the existence of biological laboratories created and funded by the United States all over the world. Funding and operating a biolab is not a problem, but where the problem is the fact that these labs are in Africa. Recently, a top Russian general was killed in an explosion. The cause of his death is not yet known, but before he died, General Kirillov revealed that the US has been involved in the operations of biolabs all around the world, especially in Africa. The question is, are these allegations true? Is the US truly operating biolabs in Africa? And if it's true, what are the implications? Let's find out. General Kirillov is the head of Russia's Radiological, Chemical, and Biological Defense Forces. His career included involvement in developing the TOS-2 flamethrower system used in the Ukraine conflict. General Kirillov also took part in measures to combat coronavirus infection and the creation of a Russian vaccine against COVID-19. He gained prominence due to his regular appearances at military briefings where he accused the Ukraine government and the US of operating laboratories and using chemical weapons. Unfortunately, he was recently killed in a blast triggered by an improvised explosive device planted near his residence in Moscow. This means that it was an assassination. Currently, a criminal investigation has been opened regarding the nature of his death, which also resulted in the death of one other person. But that's not our focus in today's video. Our focus is on the legacy that General Kirillov left behind. Prior to his death, General Kirillov was heavily invested in proving the existence of the US biolabs. According to the general in one of his military briefings, the US State Department played a direct role in the biosecurity engagement program, which was initiated by ex-President Barack Obama. The implementation of the program was carried out in several regions of the world, including the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Ukraine, and Africa. Interestingly, the general's revelation has led to an investigation into the allegations by the US Congress. The reports from the Russian general further revealed that the US State Department, Pentagon, the FBI, and the CIA uses third-party contractors, intermediaries, and NGOs such as Metabiota, CH2M Hill, and EcoHealth Alliance to serve their interest with regards to bioweapons technology. According to Kirillov, unconditional deterrence of adversaries from using weapons of mass destruction against Washington and its allies has become one of the points of the new US national strategy. Repeatedly, Kirillov has emphasized that the US State Department is directly involved in these biological programs, despite the federal foreign agency's denials. In one of his reports, he noted that the US State Department aims to exert global control over biological matters. He added that under Barack Obama, US biological programs in other countries were promoted at the recommendation of the State Department, with supporting documents available as evidence. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. In a briefing in August 2023, the general indicated that the United States has embarked on preparations for a new pandemic by looking into virus mutations. If this is true, then it means that the world is about to experience another global pandemic. This is the reason why Russia established the Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response Policy in 2023. In addition to this, documents uncovered during the special military operation in Ukraine have confirmed that the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases is involved in accumulating dangerous pathogens across various regions of the world. The general has also revealed the names of American officials connected to the development and production of dangerous vaccines. This list includes former Johnson & Johnson board member Mark McClellan, Pfizer board member Scott Gottlieb, and Stephen Hahn, the CEO of Flagship Pioneering Inc. Kirillov noted that officials from the U.S. regulatory agencies have been lobbying and prioritizing the commercial interests of pharmaceutical companies to the detriment of existing safety and quality standards. But that's not all. Documents and analytical materials studied by Russia's Radiological, Chemical, and Biological defense troops revealed that prominent members of the U.S. Democratic Party, including the Clintons, the Rockefellers, Soros, and Biden, along with other NGOs affiliated with the party, have been making huge financial investments into the U.S. biological research. Multinational corporations, often referred to as Big Pharma, are also involved in this scheme, including Pfizer, Moderna, Merck, as well as Gilead, a U.S. military-affiliated company. The involvement of non-governmental and biotech organizations enables the leaders of the Democratic Party to pocket additional financial revenue for election campaigns and to conceal cash flows. In January 2024, Russia's radiological, chemical, and biological defense troops warned that the goals of the U.S. in the military biological domain are multifold, ranging from the creation and manipulation of the causative agents of particularly dangerous infections in regions of the world that are strategically important for the United States, to efforts to achieve global superiority in biomanufacturing, biological monitoring, and the expansion of potentially unethical and illegal military biological research outside U.S. jurisdictions. Now, how does Africa come into this? On several occasions, General Kirillov reported on the issue of biological security in Africa. On one occasion, Kirillov noted that there was a possibility that the Ebola virus was artificially spread across Africa as a result of the careless handling of pathogens by American military biologists who carried out work in this region. On another occasion, he said that the Pentagon's biological warfare projects around the world give it access to potential biological weapons agents. He noted that the U.S. Navy Medical Research Center's subordinate laboratories work with pathogens in North Africa, the Middle East, and South America. In June 2023, Kirillov reported that documents obtained during the special operation in Ukraine testify to the activities of the American company Metabiota in Africa in the interests of U.S. government agencies, including the State Department. He added that the available financial and scientific documentation indicated that the company operated in Kenya, Uganda, and South Africa. Finally, in October 2023, Kirillov noted that the U.S. is moving its dual-use biological research to Africa. According to him, such activities were taking place in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Uganda, and South Africa. However, despite all the allegations, the U.S. and Western media have dismissed it as false. According to Western media, it is simply Russian propaganda and a disinformation war against the U.S. The media says that the claims are unsubstantiated and exploit Africa as a theater for a larger global power struggle. In 2022, the U.S. denied the allegations that Washington is operating biowarfare laboratories in Ukraine and called the allegations preposterous. The U.S. also warned that it was Russia that has a long and well-documented track record of using chemical weapons and that Russia might seek to use chemical or biological weapons during its ongoing offensive on its neighboring country. The question now is, who is wrong and who is right? Well, it would interest you to know that other independent researchers and investigators have corroborated the existence of the U.S. BioLabs in Africa. And, according to these investigative reporters such as Musa Sharif and Cyril Boderik, the U.S. is the country in the world that has BioLabs in all the regions of the world. It has over 400 labs in the world, and 30 of them are in Africa. The question is, why does the U.S. need over 30 BioLabs in Africa? I mean, if these labs were only in the U.S., then that is not our problem. The problem is establishing 30 BioLabs researching dangerous pathogens and viruses in another region. That in itself is definitely fishy. The first U.S. BioLabs were established in Africa in the late 90s to fight AIDS and malaria, but like we said earlier, the numbers have increased to over 400 units. When asked, the U.S. would say that they are researching biological threats to the world and finding solutions to fight these threats. But in reality, they are simply using this as an excuse to research and create bioweapons that they can add to their already long arsenal of weapons. Just last year, before the Russia-Ukraine war, the Defense Ministry of Russia stated that the United States was using Ukrainian laboratories to develop biological weapons that would be spread by specially trained migratory birds and diseased bats. It also said that the U.S. was doing this under the guise of anti-terrorist projects and activities that were permitted by the Biological Weapons Convention. But guess what? The U.S. denied it, and some blogs even claimed that Russia was spreading misinformation about the U.S. However, the documents obtained by Russia showed that the U.S. military-funded labs in Ukraine had been creating biological weapon components and testing them on the population of the country. But that's not all. Robert Kennedy Jr., a U.S. politician, confirmed this. that the US truly has biolabs where they produce illegal bioweapons in Ukraine. This means Russia was not lying. In October 2023, the Russian defense military again raised concerns that the United States is allegedly transferring its dual-use biological research to Africa, where it's believed to be conducting illegal and dangerous experiments with potential bioweapons agents in African countries. Although the US has again denied the allegations, the fact is if Russia wasn't lying about the first allegations, then it certainly couldn't be lying about this. According to Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, a senior lecturer at the Department of History and Political Studies at Nelson Mandela University in South Africa, the reason why the US is shifting its biological research to Africa is that the US is trying to expand its influence on the African continent, given that Africa is a strategic place that has always been a geopolitical battleground between great powers because of its resources. Dr. Breakfast stated that he believes that since the US already has lots of military bases in Africa, the biolabs would simply be subsumed into the military. Can you see another reason why Africa needs to dismantle all the foreign military bases on the continent? The report released by Russia also added that one of the reasons why the biolabs are set up in Africa is because it would be very easy for them to conduct dangerous experiments on the local African population without protest. Also, these experiments would be much cheaper to carry out in Africa and do not carry reputational risk. It may look as if these US labs are simple labs that were set up to help fight deadly diseases, but the fact is these labs where strains of deadly diseases are developed in Africa are a threat to the African continent. Imagine if any of these deadly diseases, be it a virus or a pathogen, happen to escape the lab. How disastrous would that be, especially for the African continent where the expertise and equipment needed to contain these diseases are not yet available? Interestingly, these scenarios have happened a couple of times. According to reports by experts, wherever there has been an outbreak of epidemic in Africa, there has always been a US lab close by. In Liberia, some articles published by Dr. Cyril Broderick, an infectious and microbiological diseases expert, condemned the United States over creating and spreading Ebola fever pathogens. Dr. Cyril found out that epidemic outbreaks happen in the regions where the American biological laboratories are located. He also added that secret operations of the US are aimed at creating and spreading the deadly virus, and that Ebola and AIDS were genetically modified organisms developed by military organizations in North America as biological weapons, specially delivered to Africa for testing. In Kenema City State Hospital, Sierra Leone, where over 13,000 people were killed due to the Ebola virus, it was discovered that there was an American laboratory funded by George Soros and Bill and Melinda Gates foundations. And guess what? Even if the US has repeatedly denied that their biolabs do not create bioweapons, it is very much easy to believe otherwise because those labs are usually high-security labs and everything done in the are shrouded in secrecy. Whenever these outbreaks happen, the end result is always them saying that the origin of the epidemic is unknown. It's worth mentioning that, during the Ebola virus outbreak, the specialists operating on the scene were mostly Europeans and Americans. During that period, they gathered over 250,000 blood samples and took them to their countries for studies without agreements of their patients. This unlawful move allowed the European and American pharmaceutical corporations to use the blood of the African people who didn't agree to become donors for free, thus saving billions of dollars while creating a vaccine. One of the patients whose blood was extracted was a Guinea woman who had code C15. The Ebola virus extracted from her blood is demonstrated on the website of the European Virus Archive, Germany's Bernhard Hocht Institute for Tropical Medicine. Guess what? It sells for 3,600 euros for 0.5 mils, which is 170 times more expensive than gold. In simple terms, it's cheaper and more profitable to conduct bio-research in Africa. These people whose blood was collected without permission were not even paid. Interestingly, the exact number of blood samples taken from the African people is not known because the American and European medics refuse to disclose any information, saying it's an issue of national security. Please, how exactly is that an issue of national security? The annoying thing about this whole situation is that despite the fact that blood samples were taken from thousands of citizens of African countries, scientists from Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea still do not have access to these samples to conduct their own research. the US refused to give them access to this research. If these bioresearches are truly for the benefit of Africa and the world, why don't the US allow scientists from Africa to access them? Reports have shown that Africa has the highest concentration of US BioLabs, and Uganda is among the countries that has displayed high interest. In Uganda, most of the medical research centers, institutes, medical schools, and biolabs, including prisons, were established by the United States and are parts of one big network. From the reports, American biologists conduct research works of dangerous viral respiratory infections using prisoners with no fear of any consequences. The number of Ugandan prisoners who are infected with tuberculosis is 3 times higher than among the country's civilian population. Officially, the U.S. labs have a mission to prevent and counter any biohazard and protect the local population. However, they are directly subordinate to the Pentagon and tasked with the job of providing the full range of preparations for studies of diseases and taking materials and info from the local population and collecting the DNA of African people. Despite the concerns from all over the world about the risk of these biothreats, the United States still plans to expand the network of biological laboratories on the African continent, which may lead to new biothreats. Africa is of great interest to America because the population of Africa is completely defenseless, and no international organization will be able to hold the Pentagon accountable. The World Health Organization cannot even do anything because a huge part of its funding comes from the United States. This means that the job of eradicating these dangerous biolands from the continent is in the hands of Africans. Now that the continent is waking up, US biolabs scattered across the continent should be an issue that should be widely spoken of, and solutions found that will ensure that these labs are removed from the continent. Africa needs to present a united front in order to stop unlawful biowarfare activities and research on the continent. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and share.